咁你個 project 就係講呢啲，
即係講，即係因為好多人就好關心呢個事啊嘛，佢關心到即係佢，即係都唔知點嘅，即係佢，即係憂鬱啊，我啊，即係第啲病啊，自閉症，所以咁即係我個 project 講係點可以，即係唔好咁，即係明白啊呢件事係好 important 件事。
It can be really difficult to talk about climate grief in general in the public because climate grief is so new, and it's really something that has only happened or has been coined in the past few years. And there aren't good resources and there aren't good well-known methods to acknowledge climate grief like there are for other types of grief. So when you are saying something to somebody, like I lost a loved one and I'm experiencing a lot of grief, people can find some way of connecting with that because they can engage, they can put themselves in that situation and imagine, if I were to lose a loved one, how would I feel? And then there are social rituals around that, but that's not the case for climate grief. A lot of the times if you're expressing climate grief, a lot of people won't know how to react.
即係又擔心之後又或諗，即係而家啲小朋友，即係佢哋大個嗰時候，個地球就會差好多，即係好驚咯。就咁即係啲人又會病咯。
My task or my responsibilities for my practicum were to look into climate change questions to see how climate change is affecting youth in BC. And as I was looking through the literature and reading articles, I noticed that there was very little in general about climate anxiety. On top of that, there was barely anything to do with youth. We know that youth climate anxiety is rising, especially with all of the protests around the world, and youth are really trying to draw attention to their futures. And I think because this is the generation that is going to be ultimately facing the effects of climate change, and I suppose I'm in that generation as well, it's really important to make sure that these youth are resilient and that they're not burning out and feeling hopeless and are able to continue working in the climate field and working in climate action. My dad passed away a couple of years ago. So while I was doing this project, there were times when I would be writing my report, and then I would be thinking about climate grief, and then I would start to experience grief about losing my dad. And I think it was really important for me to acknowledge that those griefs come obviously from a place of pain and sorrow, and being able to think about the ways that I can work through this grief together rather than separately, I think was really important, because if I kind of dealt with the climate grief, like the grief about my dad was still there, and vice versa. So understanding how pain and loss intersects within myself, and just spending time reflecting on that, writing about it, talking about it with my friends, I think has been really helpful, and it's something that I'm still processing. And I think a lot of the times people talk about youth, specifically adolescents, teenagers going through puberty, like they don't know what they're doing, their emotions are irrational, they're not going to feel this way in a couple of years. They're just teenagers. They don't know what the world is like yet. But I don't think that's the case. I think the youth now, especially those in high school, are really in tune to what is happening in the world and really understanding their own feelings, specifically around climate grief. I think this upcoming generation is although they're like at the most critical point, I think they are developing or already have developed the tools to be able to address the climate crisis, and that is what essentially gives me hope into the future.